You think shoes protect your feet. They do. But that is not why humans started wearing them. The real reason has almost nothing to do with comfort. Right now, you probably have a pair of shoes within arm's reach. Maybe you are wearing them. You put them on without thinking, the same way you brush your teeth or lock your door. But for the first 290 years of human existence, nobody did this. Not because they didn't want protection, because the thing shoes actually solved hadn't become a problem yet. Here is the thing. Bare feet are actually incredibly well engineered. Your foot has 26 bones, over 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments, and an arch that acts like a natural spring, storing and releasing energy with every step. Humans ran and walked barefoot across nearly every terrain on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years, hunting animals over rocky ground, crossing frozen tundra, climbing mountains. Bare feet weren't a weakness. They were a finely tuned survival tool shaped by millions of years of evolution. So when did that change? The oldest direct evidence of footwear comes from a surprising place: bones, not shoes. In 2005, a researcher named Eric Trinkhaus studied the toe bones of humans from around 40 years ago and noticed something strange. Their smaller toes had become noticeably weaker and thinner compared to older skeletons, while their big toes stayed strong. That specific pattern only happens when your foot is regularly gripping a stiff sole instead of flexing naturally across uneven ground. In other words, the bones themselves recorded the invention of the shoe before any actual shoe survived to prove it, and that timing lines up with something else. Around 40 to 45 years ago, humans were spreading rapidly into colder regions of Europe and Asia, places with long winters, frozen ground, and temperatures that could destroy exposed skin in minutes. This wasn't a comfort decision. It was survival. Frostbite doesn't just hurt. It kills tissue permanently. And in a world without modern medicine, an infected, frostbitten foot could turn a hunter into someone who couldn't hunt, gather, or even walk to safety. But here is where it gets really interesting. The actual invention of the shoe probably wasn't a single dramatic moment. It was almost certainly an accident that got repeated. Someone wrapping a foot in hide to cross sharp rocks. Someone tying bark around their foot near a fire for warmth. These weren't shoes designed on purpose. They were temporary fixes that worked so well people kept doing them, generation after generation, until the behavior became permanent. The oldest actual footwear we found comes from Fort Rock Cave in Oregon, sandals woven from sagebrush bark dating back roughly 10 years. They're remarkably sophisticated. Multiple bark strands woven together in a technique that took real skill to produce, not a crude wrap, but a genuine crafted object. And in the Armenia cave in Armenia, archaeologists found a single leather shoe from around 500 years ago, so well preserved that researchers could see it was stuffed with grass, likely for warmth or to help it hold its shape. That shoe is older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now here is what makes this even stranger. Once footwear caught on, it didn't stay practical for long. It became something else entirely, a signal. In ancient Egypt, sandals weren't just functional, they were status symbols. Pharaohs and nobility wore elaborately decorated sandals, sometimes made of gold, while servants and laborers often went barefoot. In ancient Rome, the type and color of your footwear indicated your social class. Senators wore specific styles of sandals that regular citizens legally weren't allowed to wear. Owning the wrong shoes could actually get you in trouble, and that pattern never really went away. High heels, originally designed in the 10th century by Persian horseback riders to help their feet stay locked in stirrups, eventually became a European fashion symbol worn almost exclusively by aristocracy and nobility who very clearly weren't riding horses. The function disappeared. The status signal remained. So somewhere between wrapping bark around a foot to survive frostbite and wearing gold sandals to prove you outranked everyone around you, shoes stopped being purely about protection. And that shift changed something inside the human foot itself. Because for hundreds of thousands of years, feet developed strength through constant use, spreading, gripping uneven ground, engaging dozens of small stabilizing muscles with every single step. Once feet started living inside stiff, structured shoes for most of the day, every single day, those muscles stopped needing to work as hard. Modern research backs this up directly. Studies comparing habitually barefoot populations to habitually shod populations have found measurable differences in foot strength, arch flexibility, and even the width of the foot itself. People who grew up wearing shoes consistently tend to have noticeably weaker intrinsic foot muscles than people who grew up walking barefoot. Your foot isn't broken. It has just been living inside training wheels for your entire life. This is why your arches sometimes ache after walking barefoot on concrete. Why standing all day in dress shoes feels different than standing all day barefoot on grass, and why some athletes have started training barefoot specifically to rebuild that lost strength. The shoe solved one problem so effectively that it created a completely different one that took modern science thousands of years to even notice. So here is the full picture. For 290 years, humans survived entirely on bare feet built by evolution to handle nearly anything. Then, roughly 40 years ago, spreading into brutal winters left permanent marks on human toe bones. The first physical proof that shoes had arrived. 10,000 years ago, someone in Oregon was weaving sagebrush into sandals skilled enough to survive in the archaeological record. 5,500 years ago, someone in Armenia stuffed a leather shoe with grass for warmth. And somewhere along the way, shoes stopped being about survival entirely and became a way to show the world exactly where you stood. You didn't choose to wear shoes today because your feet demanded it. You wore them because 40 years of accumulated habit made it automatic, the same way it did for every human before you. Going back to that first person who wrapped a piece of hide around a frozen foot and just never stopped.